ask your question another way.
Okay, all right. Okay. So what do you think Paul would think of Pauline theology? How would that work? Yeah.
Huh. I think we get pieces of his thought process in his writing.
Okay.
Right. I mean, there's certainly a lot of admonishment, a lot of structured theology in what he's giving, but it's in context. I think we get pieces of what Paul feels like in cases where he's saying, "This is me saying, this is what I would suggest," that kind of thing.
I wonder in my mind. I'm just wondering, quite literally wondering out loud, and I hit the mic, so now I'm being in trouble. But I'm quite literally wondering, like, it feels to me like oftentimes we take the writings of Paul and make them major issues when it seemed like he was doing his best to avoid making anything a major issue but Jesus, right? In my mind, right? Like a lot of, forgetting those things which are behind, I press on to the mark. And then he turns around and what is that? 1 Corinthians 2, and I preach nothing but Christ crucified. Okay. And then it's nothing but the cross. And then we come up and we like, well, let's have rules about service times and we just got all kinds of things.
Yeah,
and it feels to me like Paul himself, if he was here, might be like, yeah, guys, I wrote about that stuff, but so that you wouldn't major on it, you would focus on this.
So, he talks to the Corinthian church about some of the rule keeping, some of the food laws, all things are permissible, not everything's beneficial, right? So I think it's not, I think what he does a extremely good job of is not ignoring the reality of certain things, but putting it in its proper context with respect to Christ. So if Christ is the sum of all things, Colossians 1, right? For all things are made through him.
That's my jam, man.
Him.
He did not call it robbery.
Right.
That's going to hit, I think, on our next one. Yeah.
Right. So if that's the case, then that should be the datum. Now my engineering side is kicking in.
Okay, all right.
By which everything else is measured, right? So the lens through which we're supposed to look at everything contextually is Christ and the gospel, which puts it in its proper, perspective.
Okay. Do you feel like we're doing that?
I think that's, again, discipleship, right?
Okay.
If he's not present, if we're not really having this conversation with him day by day, then we're more likely to resort to tradition or whatever seems to be most effective today, or whatever rule keeping we default to. But if Christ is involved in it, we leave room for him to speak into it. The Holy Spirit leading us to all truth, right? Which is point to him standing before the throne on our behalf. And ultimately then that starts to affect how we see it, right? My worries, my frustrations about things are bigger until I really have considered, okay, what is he doing with this? How's he impacting it? Where's his providence involved in it? And it starts to get smaller then when that's taken into account. So when you broaden that to a group of people who are naturally going to default to freak out mode, right? The more you need Christ to be involved in it, saying, hold on, let's put this in its proper context.
I find that people get mad at you if you do that, right? Like for me, the whole point of what I'm always trying to tell people is like, if I could just get anybody to genuinely follow Jesus in the mixed, right? I don't even care what because there's a bunch of spiritual practices out here right now. We got ancestors, we got sage, we got and I'm like, look, all I need to do is get you to get Jesus in the mix genuinely. He'll take care of the other stuff, right?
Yeah.
But I think people would be like, and they've told me that, right? Well, why don't you tell them this is wrong? And I'm like, well, I could spend a lot of time talking about how that is wrong, or I could talk about how I think Jesus is right.
Yeah.
Right? And let's just talk about how Jesus is right, and then do we really trust that the Holy Spirit will do work after that, right? Because if so, then whatever they're doing that you feel like is wrong, that's for the Holy Spirit and Jesus to deal with, in my mind.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, I think we support people. It would be good if we were the hands and feet of Jesus so that they get somewhat of a tangible manifestation of his glory, But at the heart, we don't know where that's at. Only Christ does. So let's let him do his perfect work. The same way he it's
He did
done
it
for
with
me.
us. Yeah.
Before I'm trying to like do surgery on people, and
And
here's
that's
Christ standing beside me
why-
saying, I really got this.
That's why I think that distinction matters for me, right? Because I think Pauline theology does the other part, right? It's like, well, let's talk about women, let's talk about pulpits, let's talk about, right? There's all kinds of, I've heard all kinds of rules be built from, and I'm like, oh, I think if we could actually listen to the heart of Paul instead of just the words of Paul.
Time.
He did it again. He did it again. All